Welcome back to the Zoom into Success podcast, our bite-sized podcast for you to listen to with either seasoned guest entrepreneurs or the everyday person talking about their struggles with entrepreneurship. So today we've got a very special guest on. So if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Chris Talintyre. I run a small marketing consultancy called Polything. And we do three things at Polything. We help companies build out their strategy, and we have a kind of a unique way of doing that that is kind of linked with a test and learn program. We also do activation, which essentially is doing the doing. So we have a couple of different methodologies of doing that. And the third thing that we offer is essentially coaching and mentoring, which is mostly done by me.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. I really like that you do the coaching and mentoring side as well because I speak to a lot of people with all of this knowledge and experience. I think that the logical next step I actually see for most business owners that are doing something well, if they've got the time, right? I mean, um, but like it's to give back and do some level of mentoring. So obviously you went down sort of the marketing agency route, building a consultancy. What was sort of the path in your life that drove you to marketing? Because I know you've got a wealth of experience. What was the steps that you took to maybe get into marketing as well as then sort of go out on your own and start your own agencies?
Yeah, well, isn't it? I suppose it's a long, a long story. I won't bore you with all of it. But yeah, I worked in media and marketing for around 20 years. I've worked for large corporations in media. I've worked for very small media-based organizations. And I ended up working for a company that was VCT funded, which was super interesting. I kind of started there as a direct marketing manager and kind of rose through the ranks really as the internet marketing, digital marketing became a thing. So quite quickly, my role changed from being a sort of subscription-based marketeer into like digital and looking after websites and forums and all that kind of thing and building digital products. So I was there for about 8.5 years, 9 years. Ended up becoming the digital director there. We raised that company for sale in 2016. So that was like a year's worth of getting stuff in place and doing due diligence, etc., to sell that company. And then at that point, I had the choice to go with the acquiring company into the new organization or to do my own thing. And I think at that point, media wasn't doing great. I think it's probably got worse since. And I kind of took the choice at the time, I think, to get out of media and start working directly with brands and companies. So yeah, I was very lucky in that respect. So I started my consultancy work with Time Inc., which is no longer around in the UK, but a very large publisher with like 50 odd brands. I did some branded content marketing because that's what our media company was well known for. So can I help them out with that? Then I did some work with AFP, which is ad funded programming. And then I ran one of their in-house agencies for about 6 months, trying to sort of turn that around. So that kind of gave me a good start. And then in that
Yeah,
time, I could have built a roster of other clients.
you've built up a lot of knowledge there before you've actually gone straight into starting your own business. And I think it's fascinating actually the point around like media. I mean, media is definitely sort of dying in a way that 20 years ago people probably could never foresee. And obviously you've sort of got to live with it or die with the old, right? But funnily enough, obviously it was the Super Bowl last night. Obviously this probably won't go out for a couple of weeks, so maybe that was a couple of weeks ago to the people listening. But like that is probably the only place where people actually spend a ridiculous amount of their ad budget on media, right? Because I mean, it's interesting, right? Because it's very US centric. Like there's not it's a growing audience across the world, but you're spending all of your advertising budget on media that is specific to the US, which is it's quite strange, I think. But we're seeing
Well,
obviously everyone go to content and stuff like that now.
yeah, well, I think it depends how you perceive media because ultimately, things like Facebook are media.
Yeah,
YouTube is media. You could almost argue, what YouTube, what Google are doing now with Discover, that's kind of media as well. So I think it's not necessarily gone away. I think it's as big as it ever was, if not, much bigger. But actually, it's the form of media
the
that is
channels have
that's
changed. Yeah, I
changed.
think usually
Yeah.
when people refer to paid media, you're thinking newspapers, you're thinking, being on TV, big advertising budgets for TV rather than, putting a lot of money into creative, which is the core thing now. Like, I mean, I personally run my own ad campaigns, and if the more effort I put into my ad creative, the better results that we see, whether it's VSLs, whether it's static images that we've sort of created and curated. Like, it just comes better when you put more time, more effort, more budget into it, and you do see those results. Because obviously the whole point of media marketing on the internet is that you can reach whoever you want based on specific demographics. Like, I mean, Facebook marketing is fantastic, right? You can and same with LinkedIn. I've not actually used LinkedIn too much, but you can target people within specific job roles, right? I mean, that's not something you used to be able to do on the television. So it's definitely sort of gone and developed, and it'd be interesting to see how it develops further with the TikTokification of everything going into very short form content, and how things will change over the sort of the next 5 years, let's say. So obviously, so you started your marketing consultancy after a long time of working in marketing, and I think what's interesting to me is a lot of people are now starting like social media marketing agencies. A lot of people that don't have a lot of knowledge of it. What would be your sort of advice to these people that are starting out? Because I think a lot of people buy, I'll be honest, quite crappy online courses and then go on to start social media marketing agencies.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen a wealth of DMs that we both get of, hey, I'm doing this, and this, and buy this. So what would be your advice for people that are, maybe wanting to start their own business and potentially thinking about going down the agency route? What would be your advice to them to get started?
Yeah, I think my first insight would be, I know exactly what you mean about LinkedIn particularly. Like, every week I probably get about 20 to 30 people contacting me about lead generation
Yeah,
campaigns.
yeah.
And yeah, it's got to the point where I don't really go on LinkedIn now because
Yeah.
it's so
It's
full
just
of
full of
it.
DMs. It's full of DMs.
Yeah, so I think my take on this would be what makes you unique. What is your experience? What value do you have? What is your background? And then how can you utilize that within your business if you're going to start an agency? What makes you different, or what makes you stand out? Because I think with all these things, when you talk about coaching, you talk about agencies, you talk about uh, what else? Consultancy, all these types of industries, everyone struggles with exactly the same problem, which is differentiation. So if you can nail that, and there's a reason for you doing the thing that you're doing, I think you're halfway there to winning. So in my case, I think what's probably different about us is that we are very storytelling focused, which is one thing. And I come from a media background, so that made complete sense to me. And then I think the second thing was having worked with SEO agencies, PPC agencies in the past, even creative agencies. My personal frustration being on client side was that you'd run an RFP to get someone in, whittle them down to 3 or 4 people, make a decision. And then once you'd made that decision and appointed an agency, the first thing they would do is disappear for like 3 months and go and do your strategy for you. And the problem with that in these days, maybe 10, 20 years ago, that was fine. But now, you're in 90 days, your business can move on a hell of a lot. Also, they probably misconstrued some of the brief, and what they come back with wasn't relevant for that. And then really you're just left with a small proportion of the original proposal that is actually actionable at that time after 3 months. So what I've kind of done with my, I guess, approach to strategy is to dovetail those two things. So it still takes about 3 months to do properly to get a robust strategy, but I've kind of linked that with a test and learn program so that both things are informing each other. So our kind of first session builds out that test and learn program of different things that we can test, and that informs the strategy, and then the strategy informs what we want to test out. So by the end of that 3 month period, you've actually got something that's been road tested in the wild. So you've got results, and then it's a case about scaling the things that have worked and then discarding the stuff that hasn't.
Yeah, I think that's really an interesting point, right? Because I personally don't see value in a lot of things that you can't collaboratively and iteratively, work on, because other
Yeah,
things just become so stagnant so quickly now. It's personally like things that I've had to deal with, because I work with a lot of I put out a lot of RFPs on Upwork, because obviously, we're fairly
yeah,
bootstrapped, so we look for specific people. And the best people that I've found on there have been ones that are willing to sort of work quite closely together. So
yeah,
whether that's constant feedback loops, whether you're connecting every couple of weeks to actually do this, because I think, and also as a founder, and I'm sure you would have felt like this as well. Like, I mean, I don't really want to put my money to someone and not hear from them for 3 months. I very much want that open dialogue,
yeah,
because even if it's just like a not like a controlling or a paranoid thing, but I want to know how you're getting on. Like, are you having any problems? Do you need anything from me? Right? I mean, we're trying to build this for my business at the end of the day, and I've not heard from you for 3 months. I mean, it's just not effective delivery of whatever the work is. And I think that's a very good point for obviously anyone that's starting an agency, is that make sure you do it in a collaboratively and iteratively manner, right?
yeah. And I don't really see what I do as an agency. It is very much a consultancy, so it's about partnership, and it
Yeah.
is about collaboration, and it's really getting under the skin of that business and really understanding it to actually deliver the strategy, because you kind of have to really. So we're not trying to like fit products to clients. It's
Yeah.
still the other way around.
Bit more
The client
unique.
comes
It's a bit
first,
more.
their needs come
Yeah.
first, and then we kind of tweak and design the product to kind of fit their needs.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's like one of the most important points, right? Is you need to make the client feel like they are not like the only client that you work with, but because they know obviously that's not the case, but that's what the client needs to feel like, is that they're getting the attention that warrants what they're paying for, right, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And I guess what's interesting, obviously, you spoke about that your USP is obviously around storytelling, and I think that's where a lot of stuff is going. People love to hear stories. You hear about it all the time. I mean, if you're talking about like creating social media content, it should be story based. If you're creating like I personally run on Facebook ad creatives, and obviously use the dynamic creative, so it varies what's getting pushed out. And every time I review it and break it down, it's always the storytelling ad creative that performs the best. So it's obviously extremely important. So that was obviously the USP that you came up with. What would you say for the people that are going to start these businesses, or maybe already started it but kind of like stuck in the road and maybe need to rethink their USP and define their marketing strategy a little bit more? What are some of the steps that they can take to get to a point where they've got a clearer vision of what they need to do?
Yeah, I'm a real believer in research, and I think I see so many startups, especially through my mentoring practice, that have great ideas, but they haven't done the research, or they haven't done the level of research that they need to do to make that idea successful. And I think it's so important. So I would say, if you've reached a block in the road, it seems like there isn't a desire for the product that you got. You've got a feasible model, but actually people just aren't buying it. That's really a marketing problem. So you kind of need to kind of reverse engineer that and see how your product needs to change to fit what people want, essentially. So I don't do it myself, but if I was going to start again, I would very much get into things like jobs to be done, and really understand your kind of potential clients and spend time with them. Interview them, go to the networking places that they go to network, understand what their pains are, understand what they're trying to achieve, and then build your value proposition out from that, as opposed to the other way around, having an idea and deciding that's what everyone wants.
Yeah, see some advice like that recently, actually. Like a great business idea doesn't make a great business. I mean, it all comes down to execution, research, and
Yeah,
developing these things over time. Because I think the problem that's somewhat in society now is that everything is on your phone now. Everything's at your fingertips, so people expect things instantly, and it's delaying that gratification as well. After let's come in and say we've done the research, we know it's a successful idea and it could do well. Is actually delaying that success down the road, because these things don't happen overnight. You see all the stuff on social media, people think that's you know
yeah,
real life all the time.
yeah. I
It's
mean, it could be
just a
10,
force.
12 years of work that
Yeah,
they.
well, exactly right. I
So
mean, it took you what, your experience 20 years or so, or 26 years, I think you said, and to get to a point where you started your own like consultancy practice, right? I mean, it took you the time to develop to that point, and I think that often people get that construed with, oh, they're an overnight success, when no, not really. They've worked their whole life and built a business out of it. So sort of coming away from that, then, so I know that you've obviously started a business with sort of zero cash, zero capital on the back of it, and I think that that's a massive point, because I think a lot of people are, a lot of people recognize that they want to have a second income, for one, which obviously why they go down the side hustle route, because
Yeah.
either jobs don't pay enough, or just everything's becoming more and more expensive, or they want the freedom. Whatever the case is, I think a lot of them are usually starting from the same point, where a lot of people don't have the finances behind them to start the business, but maybe they do have enough time on the weekends, or in the evenings to start their business. So from your own personal journey with starting your business, what were some of the things that you could recommend in terms of starting the business with zero cash?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing to acknowledge and be really cognizant of is that time is your most precious asset, especially in the early days. So you've got to really think about how you utilize that asset in terms of the key things that you need to do to get a business running. So you've got the kind of system side of things and processes that you need to get in place to actually have an efficient business. You've got the marketing of the business itself. You've got the ideation of what is going to be and how you're going to do it. So you've really got to think about how you're going to divide that up in terms of your time. Um, and in the early days, you are going to have to do all of it because, like you say, you have no cash flow to
Yeah,
to then pay other
jack
people to
of
do
you've got to
that for
become
you.
jack
So
of all trades, haven't you?
yeah, you've kind of got to do it. So it's been smart about that. I've got dyslexia, so one of my problems is I know for a fact that I have this habit of going down rabbit holes of research into things and then not actually doing stuff with it. So that was certainly one of my learnings early on, was that I need to set aside time to research how to do specific things, but I need to kind of time box it so I just don't get into these kind of rabbit holes. Um, and then I think the other thing is about constructing a business that has the best chance of success. And what I mean by that is, like, don't necessarily, if you want a side hustle, don't necessarily choose a business model that requires you to raise loads of capital, and loads of setup costs. Choose something that is like a sales contract business that you can go out, talk to people, get to know them, and then sell them something and get them to sign a contract, and then you can deliver value for them. And then that is your kind of, I like to think of it as like a flywheel. Once you get that flywheel going, then you can iterate, and then you can just think about, like, maybe larger product suites or services that you could be offering to those same clients. But I think it's really important that at the start, initially, that it is going to be a sales based kind of proposition. You have to be comfortable with going out and talking to people and getting people to sign contracts,
Yeah,
which is not me. Like,
yeah,
I've really struggled with that being a marketeer. I really don't enjoy sales at all. But I recognize now, having done this for 6 years, I suppose, that I have to do it. You have to get your boots out there on the street and go and talk to people.
you got to get your feet. You've just got to do it. And I think that's the core thing. It's also the thing that I mentioned to a lot of people that want to obviously start a business or a side hustle. Time is what you can trade for cash at
Yeah,
that point. You haven't got cash to buy products, or buy marketing material. You haven't got that. So you have to go with what's free. And unfortunately, obviously, your time is free initially. And using your social media and all these different types of things, but also cold calling, getting out there to networking events, shaking hands, and getting people to, as you said, sign contracts, whether it's sort of monthly recurring subscriptions, or something else. It's definitely important. And I know we spoke about it just before we jumped on, but obviously you started to introduce subscription models, and I think a lot of business models are going down that route. Obviously, that there's huge value in having monthly recurring revenue, because you can weigh up what your cash flow is going to be. But what is the reason that you think that you know the entrepreneurial world is going down that route of we're now putting off these bigger contracts, whether it's, I don't know, let's say the value that most people would pay for something is a few £1,000s. We'd rather split that across 12 months in terms of a subscription-based model, where they get all of those services that they would pay for an upfront cost.
Um, I think it's a bit of a trend, if I'm honest. It's not. I come from a subscription world, so when I started my career, it was in subscriptions marketing. So I kind of understand a lot about the models and the benefits of the models and the downsides of the models. I think at the moment it's become something that certainly like investors quite like because you have this positive cash flow the whole time, and also quite often you'll have deferred liabilities, which is a really attractive thing for an investor because you kind of know it's predictable, it's a known asset, you know how much money is in the bank in terms of deferred revenue, and that's a positive thing, right? If you're going out to market to try and get some investment in, and one company has got like cash in the bank and they've got a kind of plan to scale, but you can see that it's always going to generate positive cash flow, and then you've got another business that is kind of predicated on large sales, like on an annual basis, then there's more inherent risk in that model
Yeah.
than a recurring revenue model. But I think with all these things, it seems quite hot at the moment. Everyone seems to be offering subscriptions. I'm sure at some point, the industry will move away and move on to something else. Yeah, so I think for me, it's two things.
It'll be it'll be interesting to see where the industry moves on to actually. I wonder if it'll be more of a hybrid approach where there are sort of larger upfront costs or an increased upfront cost and then split
Yeah.
as well with a subscription. It'll be interesting to see where it goes, or if it's a whole new payment model that we've not even realized yet that will come out of the woodworks. That'll be interesting.
Yeah,
And
and I
then
think for our
oh,
clients, the reason why we introduced it was because we could see the need for it.
yeah,
The companies we tend to work with are companies that are starting to scale. So what they want is like a predictable cost base, but
that
they
they
don't
can
necessarily
yeah.
know what services they're going to need within that. So in our instance, it kind of made sense to offer something like that.
Yeah, no, I can see 100% see that point because I mean it allows you to know what's coming in, what's going out, and also the service that you can get on the back of that cost, right? It's definitely a valuable proposition, I think, to have if you can offer enough suite of services that people haven't got to as well go and get five, six different subscription based
Yeah.
services to receive. And I think that's where a lot of the value will come is that a lot of these places are bringing a lot of the things in house. And I know you've obviously done a lot of that. You've got people that work with you that sort of deliver some of these services. And obviously, sort of a couple of the last points I wanted to cover, if you don't mind, is
Yeah, of
around
course.
sort of the neurological side of things. Obviously, you mentioned that you've got dyslexia. I know we spoke about before that you work with a lot of people and you're trying to position yourself with supporting these people. With these conditions, start their businesses because it can be quite tough at times, right? To sort of stand out, get out there, and put yourself forward. What would be some of your advice to those, the people, the neurological conditions, whether it's dyslexia, ADHD, things like this, that want to start a business but are maybe have some level of anxiety or just don't know where to go because as you said you're going to go down rabbit holes and different aspects of this. How can we help get them tunnel vision? How can we sort of help them come up with the business ideas and help them sort of go on to achieve what they want to achieve?
Yeah, I think for me, it's a very personal story. So I'm going to take a little bit of time to
Yeah,
tell you
no,
about
go on,
this. So
please. Yeah, please
you
do.
probably wouldn't know about this, but yeah. So my business was doing really, really well during lockdown and COVID because I sort of worked in a European business before that. So I'd kind of worked for a long time in sort of distributed teams and delivering marketing through remote teams, essentially. So we got really busy throughout the whole of the lockdown period, really. But when it came to the second lockdown, unfortunately, my wife got diagnosed with cancer. And uh, I basically had to close off a lot of the contracts that we were running because I just didn't have the time to do that. We had to take our daughter out of nursery. because we didn't want her to kind of transfer any illnesses and stuff because my wife was immune suppressed at that point. So essentially, I had to become a carer for 8 months and just keep the business on like a skeleton at that time, which was really difficult. But it did give me the time to kind of think about what was important. And we were really, really reliant on friends and family for the support during that period to just kind of get us through. And I thought, what can I do to kind of give back, as it were? And I had received some mentoring probably about 6 or 7 years before that when I kind of made the jump up to board level. And I found it really useful. I thought, oh, maybe that's something I could do. Maybe it's something I can offer. So I kind of explored that while I was caring. I kind of started mentoring on a couple of digital platforms like Digital Boost and then Help to Grow. And then again, dyslexia, went down this rabbit hole of mentoring, coaching, and then did an ILM level 5, which took me about, I think it was about 8 months to get credited, etc. Um, so from that, what I've really noticed is they encouraged us during the course to focus on where our practice might go. And for me, I hadn't engaged with my dyslexia from the point of being diagnosed. I got diagnosed after A levels. I thought, okay, right, fine. Went to university. I think I got a laptop or something back then, which is like the size of a suitcase. And that was it. I just kind of got on my life, got on with my work life. And it was only really through that process I kind of started thinking more and more about my dyslexia and how that might have been affecting me. But what I did in the end was I started connecting more with people in the dyslexia field and the neurodiversity field within London, just to get a better sense about what is it all about and where are things now. And what I found was it's a really interesting and vibrant space. So I've kind of incorporated that into my own practice. So I either coach founders well, sorry, tend to mentor founders and I coach people with neurodiverse conditions. Um, but ultimately, I want to kind of bring those two things together. So back to your original point about what, why should neurodiverse people, how should they think about this? I think it is an exploration. I think it's very unique. I've been coaching in the space for like probably about a year now, and not even with the same diagnosis, people have struggled with completely different things. So some people can function within larger organizations and corporations and things like that. But what I'm starting to notice is that it's almost like the entrepreneurial spirit is kind of born out of these types of people with ADHD or dyslexia and things like that. And it maybe is something to do with the fact that they feel that they don't fit, or that the kind of businesses that are out there don't really work in the way their minds work. But I think as well, there's a lot of creativity within the space, and I think that's probably the other driving force behind the entrepreneurial side of neurodiversity. So I think go with it. Embrace the difference and embrace your different ideas and the way you approach things, and just get the support that you need for the stuff that you don't do so well at. And I think now with AI, it's just amazing, especially for dyslexic people. My life is so vastly improved now that AI is out there. It really does help.
Yeah, that was the point that I like straight away thought of as you said, like get the support that you need. Because I mean, like like base level Chat GPT is completely free, and obviously you can use things like Bard by Google as well. Like AI has definitely changed, I would say, a lot of lives. Either people, maybe losing jobs down the line, but you know, allowing people to start businesses with knowledge that they don't have, whether it's you struggle with the accounting element of it and dealing with your cash flow forecast. AI can generate you spreadsheets and do it all for you. Whether it's ideation, you want a bit more support, a bit of feedback on your ideation, like ChatGPT can do that. It's a fantastic tool that everyone should use. So thank you very much for that. I think the last question that we're asking everyone on this
if you were to sort of lose your business, all of the money that you had, and all these types of things, but you kept your knowledge, what would be the first steps that you would take to get back into the position that you're in today?
Well, I guess I've sort of kind of done that,
Yeah,
but
well, exactly. You can sort
I'll
of give a
come back
carbon
to
copy.
that question in a minute. But there's something I forgot to mention around the neurodiversity piece. So it's really important actually. If you do feel that you have a condition like ADHD or dyslexia or autism or whatever it may be, there is governmental help out there. There's a scheme called Access to Work. Um, so I don't think they necessarily fund diagnosis, but if you can get a diagnosis, you can certainly apply to Access to Work to get help with things like technology. So it might be like some assistive technology. It could be computers. It could be training. It could be even coaching. All of those things are kind of available through that Access to Work. So it's really, really important if
Yeah,
you do
that's
feel like
probably
that to
yeah.
apply. It will take half a year probably before you actually have an assessment, but get onto it now
Yeah, I mean, if
because
you
it's
can
definitely
get
worth
stuff
it.
for like I actually think there's a lot of governmental resources that not a lot of people know about that
Yeah,
is there for free. And I think part of the problem though for a lot of people, I've seen some stories recently, and I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here, that it just takes so long to get diagnosed in this country now. Like I've seen
yeah,
stories where people, I think Joe done one recently, who are like a political broadcast social media platform that so I think this person had like was under the impression that they have Asperger's, and I think they've been on like trying to get diagnosed for 6 years. They've recently changed the name of the condition like in that time. So like they're extremely struggling to get that, and without the official diagnosis, they obviously can't get the benefits, or not the benefits, but like the support
yeah.
that's there for those conditions. So I think that's probably the core struggle that a lot of people have.
Yeah, I think you can apply with a working diagnosis as well, but how that works, I'm not
Yeah.
entirely sure. But going back to your previous question, so it was if I lost all
If
the
you were
money
to,
and I start
yeah,
again
lost
with
everything, but
the
you've still
knowledge
got the
I've got,
knowledge. Yeah.
yeah. I think maybe it's my age, but I think if I was going to start again, I think I would think about um, my energy levels and like how much I could devote to a business. Because ultimately, I believe a business should serve you rather than the other way around. It's a vehicle for your life rather than you being
The
beholden
business.
until the
Yeah.
business. So I think it would I would definitely need to think about like how much energy have I got to build something again and what would I want to build, and start from that perspective. I think experience is really useful, but as we talked about, like things are moving at such a pace now.
Do you have the
Experience
energy to
and
keep
can
up?
get out of date very quickly if you don't kind of
Yeah.
keep things moving. So I think it's recognizing like how much energy or how much time have you got to devote to this thing, and really I think the thing that helps is hacking your own motivation for doing something. I think you've got to do a lot of soul searching and actually do something that you're aligned with. Because if it doesn't, on those bleak, January mornings when it's cold outside and you've got to get out and go and do something, those are going to be the days that you'll really struggle if you're not aligned with it, like in your heart, as it were.
Yeah, it's got to be you got to be passionate. I think
Yeah,
that's like thoroughly, I'll be honest, the most important point. I think everyone thinks about the money aspect, but starting a business is tough. Like
yeah,
it
it's
is
going to pull you
extremely
apart.
tough. Yeah, it's extremely tough because at the end of the day, you're the only one accountable of marketing, operations, sales, of finance. You are accountable of everything, risk, legal. You are doing everything. Maybe you're doing it alongside a full-time job because you need to work. So the only thing that is going to drive you on those hard days is your passion for either what you're solving or the passion that you've got over the longer term in terms of what you want to achieve in life. That's what keeps you going. So thank you so much, Chris, for coming on. It has been
No
really,
worries.
really valuable. I think there's been a lot of valuable points that people will get from this. So thank you so much. And for everyone listening, hopefully this can help you zoom into success.